Welcome to Remember, a show about histories, mysteries. And did you know that Michelangelo hated painting the Sistine Chapel?
How much did he get paid?
Something like 3,000 ducats, I think.
3,000 gold ducats?
3,000 gold ducats. Welcome to the Cardassian Empire. Hello, my name is Paula, and joining me fresh on the heels of his Pacific Northwest journey to hunt down the elusive Squatch is Matthew. And did you find Mr. Yeti?
No, but I shot a fisherman, but we became fast friends.
Well, that's why, as a fisherman, you don't wear a bear costume.
Look, don't wear a bear costume. Also, make your mind up. High-vis or camo. You can't have both.
Well, on today's episode, we're not talking about any of that at all. We are talking about the great Italian Renaissance artist, Michelangelo. Whatever you do, don't call him a painter. Okay, he spits on you for that kind of insult.
Did he actually spit on people?
He might have. I didn't see that in any of the reports, but he was kind of a grump. So I would not be surprised to hear that he spit on people. Because he is a sculptor. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. Sculpting's just painting rocks.
Michelangelo's rolling over in his grave right now.
His elaborately sculpted, painted grave.
Beautiful tomb painted with chisels and hammers and dust.
I'm starting to think that me and you don't know that much about sculpting. No, I mention it.
It's not an art podcast, everyone. It's a history podcast.
Right, stop it. Artists, what are you doing? Sick of all these artists coming in going, Matthew, you're so wonderful at your craft. Why are you here? Look, I'm just a normal guy like you. All right? Yeah, I've been known to paint a tapestry of... You don't paint tapestries.
Well, you don't paint sculptures either.
I've been known to weave a tapestry of beautiful words put together with a silky tone that wish I delivered them. But look, it's a history podcast, people. Get over it. Sometimes I also talk about monsters.
He really wasn't a painter, though. He started out when he was 13 or so doing an apprenticeship with a painter. And of course, he was really good at it because he was an artistic genius, but he did not like it. So Michelangelo actually got fired from that apprenticeship because one of his tasks was to make copies of the artist's work, which he was, of course, very good at doing. And one day, he decided to just improve upon the original work by making some changes to it. And understandably, that got him sacked.
Longer dongs. All these people need more muscularity and veins and stuff.
It's like, this needs to be more realistic. I'm just going to add a few little lines here. The original artist is like,
hey, you've done great work, but did you need to add so many demons?
It's like that restoration that poor woman tried to do to what Jesus' face, except how bad that was. Flip that. That's how good what Michelangelo did was.
I believe she did that, though, with the pure love of Jesus in her heart. And I think that's probably fine, you know.
She tried real hard.
It might be an abomination to man and beast, but still, I think it's pretty good, really, when you think about it.
Unlike that lady whose artistic talent was not recognized by anyone, soon Michelangelo was noticed by the all-powerful Medicis in Florence and was taken under their wing, where he embarked on his artistic passion, sculpting.
I have multiple board games called Medici. Hi, I like board games. They're probably will come up in the future, so best to lay that groundwork now, I feel.
We made reference to it already in our last episode. We made a whole bunch of jokes about tabletop gaming.
I'm trying to prime the listener to know what they're getting into. The viewer to recognize what visuals might be. Look, board games.
So Michelangelo is immediately recognized as being incredibly gifted, which of course causes some jealousy with the other young men being supported as artists by the Medicis. Like we said before, Michelangelo was not the most personable kind of guy, and apparently he got beat up a few times over his work and his talent, and probably his snobby attitude.
I get it. Look, I get it. That's fine, honestly. And I think it builds character.
He does have a lot of what he refers to as melancholy throughout his life, and maybe this was the start of that.
Oh, okay. I relate to that part of his story then. I instantly feel bad. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
He's depressed. Okay.
I think he kind of was, actually. His family also wasn't super supportive initially of his desire to pursue art. Of course, this is not a new story. Anyone who has ever wanted to pursue the arts can relate to this, I'd bet. But Michelangelo's family were minor nobility in Florence and pretty low level, like bureaucrats.
Yeah, okay.
And his dad wanted all of his sons. He had 6 sons.
Wow.
Side note, his wife basically lived in their marriage long enough to pop out 6 sons, one after the other, and then died.
God's work. Done and in and out. Back to Jesus.
You fulfilled your role as a woman, and you're done.
Off you pop.
You're done now. His dad wanted all of his sons, all 6 of them, to have money and status and respect. And at this time, people just did not respect most artists. Again, I guess this isn't really a new story.
He just wanted to start his own minor league baseball team. Is that so much to ask?
Can they all just
Really?
please be athletes?
Come on.
Please.
None of you have got those genes. You're all just there. Phenomenal cheers, guys. I really appreciate that. And the logo for this team is just 10 out of 10. But could someone practice pitching, please?
Could someone learn how to throw the ball? But at this time, artists were seen very much like servants. Like not even just regular citizens. It was seen as like a servant kind of position.
Well, there was more of a painting the inside of your house type of situation still going on. Like literally painting the inside of your house, like with paintings rather than just a bit of whitewash. So they're kind of like interior decorators, you know, just handyman in a way.
I think so, yeah. Michelangelo is one of the few who broke out of that mold and ended up being very famous and very respected within his own life.
Broke out the mold. Good sculpting pun there, Paul. I appreciate it.
It was totally on purpose. I did not realize I was making that pun until you said it just now. I totally knew that I had written it in that way.
Leave no pun unturned. That's what I say.
Michelangelo actually used to write letters home to his father and his brothers and sign them Michelangelo, sculptor in Rome, or sculptor in Florence, or wherever he happened to be at the time. Maybe to stick it to his family that he had made
They
it.
know.
I don't know why he signed them this way. It could have just been as like a form of identification. He definitely always signed his letters like Michelangelo in whatever city he was in. So I don't know if that was supposed to be some sort of like identifying proof of who actually sent this letter.
I'd have said something on the lines of, Michelangelo, P.S. Your grave will be beautiful.
And you're going to be buried in a beautiful tomb made by my own hands.
Everyone's going to know you only because you died. But carry on. What happened then? He met the other turtles?
We're learning a lot. We are going to talk about Raphael briefly. We are learning a lot about Matthew in this episode, I feel like. Just a lot of the inner workings of Matthew's heart.
It's dark in here. There's no Sistine Chapel. Not a lot of light getting in, but that's fine.
One of the things that made Michelangelo so famous was the lifelike
The
accuracies. Was his love of pizza.
I promised myself now I wouldn't make any Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles jokes at all. But I've already made 2.
I didn't write a single one into this script, and you've already made 2. And now
It's
I have
so
to talk
obvious.
about Michelangelo being famous because of his love of partying and pizza.
He coined the term cowabunga. Now,
So in addition to partying and pizza and cowabunga, Michelangelo is famous because of the lifelike accuracies of his human figures carved out of marble. During his youth, one of his apprenticeships allowed him to access a morgue, and he used that access to dissect and study the human body. He needed to see how the body worked to be able to accurately recreate its form, Matthew. And if this sounds gross and weird, people at the time also thought it was.
yeah, it's not. That's not. No, there's so many examples of this type of thing happening, though. These genius artists and painters and different people. There's this one actress recently, I can't remember what her name is, but she was like, for me to get into the role, I actually attended and did a dissection in a scientific hospital. I'm like, you could just act and pretend.
Just pretend.
Just pretend. I do think that there have been some scientific breakthroughs, though, done from people who have really studied the physicality of humans, like who weren't doctors and stuff like that. So I recognize the benefit of it, but come on, dude.
He's one of the first people who did this.
Just leave. Just don't. You know? Because eventually he's going to go off. He's going to be like thinking, well, I can't get into the hospital anymore, so I got to get my own corpses. You know, this is how these things start.
You skunk. In a different timeline, this podcast episode might be about the serial killer Michelangelo, who was so obsessed with creating lifelike sculptures that he murdered and dissected his victims in pursuit of his art. So I'm glad that we've made the same joke.
Good. We're on the same wavelength. It's terrible.
It also was kind of not like super legal what he was doing.
I can't imagine it was.
But luckily for all of us, he chose the path of good. He learned what he could, and he moved on. So when you think of Michelangelo and his work, a few things probably immediately come to mind. The statue David.
Yeah.
Maybe the La Pieta, which is the work that like launched him into stardom. And most definitely, the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah, banger. What a anthem.
The Sistine Chapel is a chapel. Wow, I just said the word chapel so many times.
I think chapel as well is an understatement.
Yeah, it's a cathedral, really.
It's not like your local diocese next to the Scout Hut and the Village Fete. It's the Sistine Chapel.
It's at the official residence of the Pope in the Vatican City. It was built by Pope Sixtus IV, and work was completed in 1481. It's actually called the Sistine Chapel because it's named after him. Sixtus and Sistine, I guess, are from the same Latin.
That makes sense.
Root word. The chapel is modeled after descriptions of Solomon's temple and is 118 feet long, 46 feet wide, and has a barrel vault ceiling that stretched up to about 66 feet high. It's big. The Sistine Chapel is where new popes are elected, even still today. And it is a massively popular tourist attraction because of the fresco paintings covering the ceiling done by Michelangelo, who did not want to be painting them.
And also when you walk through, you just get told to shush all the time. Do you know this?
I imagine, because you're in like a church.
They ask you to shush. They're big shushers in the Vatican City. They shush you. They shush all those crimes. They're big shushers.
The Pope cannot hear the voice of God if everyone else is talking, Matthew.
Oh, yeah, obviously. I get it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
so,
big time.
Hush. In 1505, Michelangelo has made his name in Rome, and Pope Julius II, yes.
I'm imagining that he made his name in Rome, and it's like the Hollywood sign. He's like, made his name. It's like, Michelangelo!
Actually, side tangent, his statue, I believe it was the La Pieta, because it was like the first big thing he did. When people first saw it, a lot of people were attributing it to a different artist. They didn't know Michelangelo, and he got really mad about this and snuck back in to where it was on display and carved his name into the statue.
Yeah, big time. That's exactly what I would have done.
He's like one of the first people who like signed his work. People weren't really doing that before. So because of this, Pope Julius II commissions him to create his tomb. It's meant to be a massive marble structure so big that St. Peter's Basilica will need to be rebuilt to house it.
What an arsehole.
Okay, I'm going to try not to do this. I wrote, because it was a pain in the butt to type out the word Michelangelo constantly. I wrote it just as M in a lot of places, and I'm going to try not to read it as M, but I did just now. M is happier than a pig in mud. He's working on a 3-level freestanding structure that's going to include 40 statues.
It's like a masterpiece for him to make then.
It's a huge masterpiece.
And it's what he wants to be doing,
yeah.
Right?
It's a dream project for him. He spends 8 months just picking out the marble for the project.
God, I mean, how many different types of marble are there, really? Don't tell me. I don't want to know, but I don't think there's 8 months worth. I really don't.
How many months have we spent preparing to do this podcast?
Yeah, but this is a masterpiece.
Yeah, but this is our life's work, okay? Midway through the project, the Pope just puts it on hold. He's running out of money, and he needs to send funds to the St. Peter's Basilica project that is currently happening. Michelangelo and the Pope argue about this, and Michelangelo leaves Rome, heading back to Florence.
You know the Pope is always going to be like, gets the last word in, and the last word is, God told me.
God said so. And you can leave if you don't like it.
Super difficult to argue.
And Michelangelo's like, fine, I will leave then. And Pope's like, good, go. I don't want you here anyway. And Michelangelo's like, great, don't call me.
Don't call me, surely I'm outie.
That's right. Outie. Fast forward a little bit to 1508. Pope Julius decides he wants the vault ceiling of the Sistine Chapel repainted. Currently, it is decorated to look like a starry sky.
That actually sounds quite nice.
It sounds nice. It does. There are already frescoes along the walls of the chapel, so, why not do this on the ceiling as well? Maybe with images of the 12 apostles.
Because it's on the ceiling, Pope. That's why we didn't do that. Because it's going to be an absolute pain. That's the main reason.
Except God told me. God told me, though, that we should put the 12 apostles on the ceiling.
Yeah, well, did God heal my back? No.
Again, I think you and Michelangelo have a lot in common. The Pope reaches out to his old pal Mikey and says, hey, you're gonna do this for me. And Mikey says, no thank you.
I'm good, thanks. I don't want to do half another project.
Yeah,
cheers.
No thank you. Michelangelo is a sculptor. He's not a painter. And this isn't just a point of pride. It's true. Michelangelo doesn't paint. He has very little experience painting and almost none in the technique of fresco. He was trained in it back when he was that teenage apprentice, and that's it.
Weren't we all?
Yeah. Back in our days of being a teenage apprentice, we all had a lesson or two, an intro to fresco painting.
A bit of decoupage, that's basically the same thing.
Modge Podge collage making.
I'm cutting a potato in half, making a stamp. We've all been there. It's very similar work, honestly.
I'm gluing some macaroni on a piece of paper. I'm sticking it up on the refrigerator at home. That's my life's work.
Your father's quietly walking downstairs each night, throwing them in the trash while he goes to get another beer because of his disappointment. We've been in that life. We understand what it's like.
I need a drink after that comment. Luckily,
that's what my dad
just
said.
Coffee.
He says, I'm going to need a drink if you're going to have to show me some more Modge Podge that you did.
Please, just be a low-level government official, please.
Please, for the love of anything worthy, could you do something that involves a payslip? Anything. I'm paid in self-worth. And he's like, how's that working out for you? And I'm like, not good.
I'm very hungry.
I'm incredibly hungry, and I'll be honest, teetering on the edge of existence right now. But that's fine. Carry on.
Michelangelo's about 33 at this point. So we're talking it's been 20 years since he was trained in the basics of fresco painting. The Pope keeps sending messengers insisting that Michelangelo take on the project and threatening him if he doesn't accept.
Why does he want Michelangelo to do it and not a fresco painter? Is this a punishment, or does he just believe in him? Why is he...
Well, there's a couple different theories about this. Michelangelo suspects that there is a plot against him.
Is it to keep him close to the Pope so he's not out there doing anything he shouldn't be doing?
I think the Pope has been convinced that Michelangelo is the best person for this job for some reason. Michelangelo thinks this is because there's a plot against him, that some of his fellow artists were trying to set him up to fail. So some of my research said that the artist Raphael, cowabunga dude, what did Raphael say?
Raphael was too busy being sensible, I think, wasn't he, really? As a leader, kind of rogue kind of character.
I guess that's right. He was kind of the leader. Well, some of my research said that Raphael convinced the Pope to choose Michelangelo for the job as a form of sabotage. Some say it was actually the architect, Bramante, who was the one working on St. Peter's Basilica, who had convinced the Pope that it was bad luck to have your own tomb built while you're still alive, because he wanted that budget to go to his project. I don't know if this is true, but this is what some people say.
I could believe that, though.
And then he's like, hey, Pope, why don't you have Michelangelo come do this fresco painting? He's the right guy for the job because he thinks Michelangelo's going to fail at the painting and going to have to leave Rome in humiliation and never come back.
So we'll never take money away from the Basilica again, essentially. That makes sense.
So Michelangelo sends messengers back to the Pope and he tells them to say, this is a translated quote, that he was never going to return. that his good and faithful service had not deserved this change, to be hunted away from the Pope's presence like a rogue, and as His Holiness did not wish to have anything more to do with the tomb, he was free and did not wish to bind himself again. He's sassy.
Pretty bold moves at the time when a Pope is essentially a king.
He's very sassy with the Pope. He's like, no, I don't want to do that. No, thank you.
Well, good for him. He does end up doing it, though, I suppose. So
he does. As spoilers, he ends up doing it because the Pope was not about to take no for an answer. And after some more pleading and promises to be nice, Michelangelo had to face the fact that he kind of couldn't say no.
Because the Pope could send people to kill you. He could and would,
And at this point had kind of chased Michelangelo away. And that's why Michelangelo's like, in his quote here, he says, to be hunted away from his presence like a rogue. It's like, you sent people after me and I had to leave Rome because I was mad at you about the tomb project being put on hold. Like, why would I want to come work for you? But the Pope's like, no, I'm sorry. I'll be nice. Please come back. And so Michelangelo's like, fine, okay. And so he goes back to Rome.
Looks like I'm painting this goddamn chapel.
Michelangelo does get a little compromised, though. So he tells Pope Julius that he will not be painting the 12 apostles on the ceiling. Instead, he will cover the 6,000 square feet of ceiling with scenes from the Old Testament. And don't forget, that ceiling is 60 feet off the ground, Matthew.
Yeah, but that does leave room for a bit of like scenery, though, and background, and some greenery, that type of stuff. Open sky. You can have a bit more fun with it.
He actually ends up painting as well some like architectural details. It's a huge ceiling, and that height, it makes me sick to my stomach. I have a fear of heights. It makes me sick to my stomach to think about being 6 stories up painting like that.
On some 1500 scaffolding. Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, and he's actually dissatisfied with the scaffolding design that our architect friend Bramante pitched him. He was like, I'll come up with the scaffolding for this. He was going to like drill holes in the ceiling to hold up the scaffolding. And Michelangelo was like, no, that's going to leave holes. And how the heck am I going to paint around that? I can't do that.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
So Michelangelo comes up with his own scaffolding design that could be built and attached to the walls in a way that makes him happier. And then it's got like fabric hanging under it to catch debris and hide the work while it's in progress. Because, the Pope wasn't about to close the chapel while work was being done.
How long did it take to do?
4 years.
4 years lying on your back painting a ceiling you don't want to do? That sucks.
Well,
right.
Did you know that Michelangelo did not paint the ceiling while lying on his back? That false idea came about because that's how it was portrayed in the 1965 movie, The Agony and the Ecstasy.
No, that comes about because it stands to reason. He would have to be on his back to paint a ceiling.
He stood and leaned his head back, reaching above himself to paint like this.
That's worse.
It was a literal pain in the neck. Michelangelo wrote a poem about it. I'm going to read it to you now.
I bet it's really chipper.
In this hard toil, I've such a goiter grown, like cats that water drink in Lombardy, or wheresoever else the place may be, that chin and belly meet perforce in one. My beard doth point to heaven, my scalp its place upon my shoulder finds. My chest, you'll say, a harpy's is. My paintbrush all the day doth drip a rich mosaic on my face. My loins have entered my paunch within. My nether end my balance doth supply. My feet, unseen, move to and fro in vain. In front to utmost length is stretched my skin, and wrinkled up in folds behind, while I am bent as bowmen bend a bow in Spain. No longer true or sane, the judgment now doth from the mind proceed, for 'tis ill shooting through a twisted reed. Then thou, my picture dead, defend it, Giovan, and my honor. Why? The place is wrong, and no painter I. Which was translated by S. Elizabeth Hall.
And he's already not having a good time. So this is, I feel bad for him.
So as you can see, Michelangelo, who's actually a prolific letter and poetry writer. was having a bad time.
Sounds like it. I feel sorry for him a little bit, kind of, I think. Yeah.
The Pope is also constantly bugging Michelangelo while he's working, asking, when will you be done? And Michelangelo answers like an absolute skunk. He says, when I can.
When God allows it, that's when.
He's like, you wanted me to do this, so it takes the time it takes.
Is he getting paid just like a one-off fee, or is he getting paid by the day? Do we know?
He's been promised a fee, and if I'm not mistaken, I didn't write down the amount, but I believe it was 3,000 ducats, like we said before.
Just flat fee?
But it's not necessarily being paid to him in any sort of regular payment schedule.
Like just when he's done? Yeah.
So there's a lot of letters home about he's like, Dad, I know you need money, but I am also struggling.
He's probably worried he's never going to get the money.
He might be. He might legitimately be worried about that, yes.
What are you going to do? Who are you going to complain to? It's the Pope not paying you. Yeah. God?
That's your only recourse. So fresco painting, to get into something slightly technical now, is really cool because it lasts for so long. But it's a lot of work. It essentially requires mixing quicklime, which is calcified lime, with water and sand to produce a plaster that stays wet long enough for you to paint on it. The paint and the plaster dry together, making the paint a permanent part of the plaster. It like bonds.
So kind of like you're basically plastering the whole ceiling, but you're painting the plaster as it goes on.
Yes.
Okay.
It's time consuming. And
sounds miserable.
The quicklime can actually give you chemical burns. So this is another thing that is happening.
That's the stuff that's going all over his face.
Like, yeah, the plaster dripping down, the paint dripping down. And if you don't get the mixture just right, the moisture in it can keep the plaster from drying quickly enough, and then it gets moldy, which happens to Michelangelo, which makes him want to quit.
Because he's not a professional at it. It's not his... Ugh.
This is what he tells the Pope, because he's like, all right, that's it. I'm done. I can't do this. He says, this is my quote, I have already told your holiness that this is not my art. All that I have done is spoiled, because his images were being obscured by this mold growing in. So he's like, right, see, please don't make me do this anymore. So the Pope sends someone to inspect it, and they're like, oh, you're just adding too much water to your mixture. Do less of that. Back to work.
Redo this whole lot, though, first.
Yeah, fix that, change your mixture, but keep going. This
really does seem like a punishment of some description. It does. It feels like he's being punished for, I don't know, other artists, that type of thing maybe, but this feels like torture.
Yeah. It is interesting because nothing in my research suggests that anyone thinks like the Pope was punishing him, but there certainly is the suggestion, I think it makes sense, and there's certainly the suggestion that...
No thought is being put to Michelangelo's well-being, essentially.
Well, no. And also that he was set up by other artists who didn't like him to do this work that they didn't want to do, that they thought he would be bad at and get him in trouble.
And it's like wastes 4 years of his time as well, you know?
Now, this might be apocryphal, but the Pope kept trying to peek at the work before it was done, and Michelangelo kept trying to chase him away. One day, I don't know if this is true, but I love this story. One day, the Pope disguises himself and tries to sneak up the scaffolding, but Michelangelo, of course, recognizes him and starts throwing stuff at him to get him to go back down.
Honestly, they sound like they got a hilarious relationship at times.
During an argument about the work, the Pope whacks him on the head with his staff, and Michelangelo's like, forget you, and runs off. Super healthy work dynamic.
It's a good thing Michelangelo didn't just punch the Pope, because I don't know what happens when you punch the Pope, if I'm honest.
This is also, Pope Julius was known as like the warrior Pope. He actually went into battle and fought in war. So he maybe was of a bit more of a physical mindset than maybe some other popes. But the Pope ends up sending Michelangelo like $500, actually some payment. He's like, here's some of the money I owe you. I'm so sorry. Please come back to work.
So he's got the money as well. He's just not paying it. Of course he's got the money. He's the goddamn Pope.
I mean, eventually he does, but I think it is, it's a bit of a painful process, I think, getting paid. But he does get paid for it. Eventually, Michelangelo finishes. It took him 4 years to paint the entire 6,000 square foot ceiling. Oh, and also for the scaffolding, it was half of the ceiling at a time. So for the first half of the project, it covered half the ceiling. And then for the second half, they moved it. So it didn't cover the whole ceiling the whole 4 years. So he writes this in a letter to a friend. After 4 tortured years, more than 400 over life-sized figures, I felt as old and as weary as Jeremiah. I was only 37, yet friends did not recognize the old man I had become. 4 years of incredibly physical labor and an artistic expression that you don't even think you're good at.
It probably did age him, right?
Yeah.
He probably struggled with injuries from that for the rest of his life, you know?
And what he did still draws tourists to the Sistine Chapel today.
Yeah.
His frescoes became so well known that he changed the way we think about religious imagery. In the creation of Adam, you know the one, God stretched out across a brain-like shape, reaching his hand out to nude Adam and touching his finger. You've seen it.
Don't get me started on how it's a perfect bisection of the brain.
This was groundbreaking. I knew when I mentioned this painting you were going to have something to say about it, but hold on to it. No one had painted God like that before. At the time, God was usually depicted as just a hand reaching down from the heavens. But here we see his whole entire body. His old man face, white hair, the muscles of him, his beard. I mean, God is fit in this image.
I mean, he paints Zeus, doesn't he, essentially?
Michelangelo is the reason that we picture God like that now so often.
Wow, when you put it that way, that's an indelible mark on humanity that's never going to go away. Yeah. That's an incredible cultural shift, right?
Yeah.
He changed the way people think about God on a fundamental level, which is incredible, really.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Some people also say there's Masonic imagery in the paintings, and some say there are hidden insults to the Pope painted throughout.
I can believe that one.
But that is a conspiracy for another time. So what about that tomb? Does Michelangelo ever get to finish it?
Man, I'd love to build that man's grave. That's what he was thinking the whole time.
He's like, I can't wait to get back to this tomb, make a grave and put him in it.
And I'm going to celebrate the day they put you in that box, I tell you.
So in 1512, once he'd finished the Sistine Chapel, he is able to spend time creating 3 of the 40 statues for Pope Julius's tomb. But over the years, the project keeps getting downgraded and downgraded until it is finally finished in 1545, 32 years after Pope Julius actually died. He's not even entombed there. So it's really more of just like a monument, and only ends up featuring 3 sculptures by Michelangelo.
Imagine being famous for the rest of your life for doing the thing that you weren't even the best at doing.
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't even what he was good at.
Super known for is the thing he's like, this isn't even my art.
It's like being the world's greatest downhill skier and being famous for basketball. It's like, don't forget though, I'm also the world's greatest downhill skier.
Maybe that's why he signed all his letters sculptor. Right?
Sculptor!
He's like, but what I am is a sculptor.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
In 1535 through 1541, Michelangelo actually returns to the Sistine Chapel to paint the wall behind the altar. The painting is The Last Judgment, and he got into some trouble because it had so many nude figures.
Yeah, big time.
Later, they brought in Daniel da Volterra, excuse me for, hopefully I'm saying that right, to paint over the genitalia, earning him the nickname Il Bragatone, which means the breeches painter. Everyone's like, oh, that's the guy who covers up all the nudes.
We've been loving going to this church ever since the nudes got put up. It's been fantastic.
I love praying in front of that altar. I focus so hard in on it.
I'm horny for God right now. That's how I feel. That's what I love.
So there you go. The ceiling of the Sistine Chapel is one of the most revered displays of art to exist. And the man who is responsible for that beauty, that achievement, was miserable while doing it.
Well, that says a lot about the human condition, I suppose, doesn't it? Well, another thing that says a lot about the human condition is telling someone about this video who you think might enjoy this video. I think that is the greatest way to grow a YouTube channel, but also, of course, all the other things, maybe hitting that subscribe button would be great. We appreciate you for being here and watching the video. Paul, thank you so much for doing all this research and telling us a story about Michelangelo. It was honestly, it had some ups and downs.
He had some ups and downs.
But until next time, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and there'll be more Remember here next week. We'll see you there. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.